Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's 90-minute market introduction to the US market. My name is Helen Sundqvist. I work as a communication manager at Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. We are hosts of today's webinar. I will be your moderator while we look into the US market, what's currently happening in regards to international trade. There have been some slight turbulence the last couple of weeks. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but we're also going to hear for companies interested in expanding into the US market, what you should think about. Before we jump in, I'd like to take a few minutes to just say some words about Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. We're a private business organization owned and financed by our 330 member companies. Together, our member companies employ around 28,000 people and have an annual combined turnover of 132 billion Swedish crowns. We're the northernmost of 11 regional chambers in Sweden, and the only one that has two national borders. We border both Finland and Norway. We work within three focus areas: infrastructure, international trade, skills, and networking. We create value and drive business opportunities through a wide range of different ways for companies that are members for us. We connect companies and businesses both in our region, but also nationally and globally. We host a number of events, ranging from large events like Logistics Forum North, which I will tell you more about later, to roundtable discussions, meetings with decision makers, workshops, networking events, and B2B matchmaking processes. We do a lot of advocacy work, and we are also a referral body to ensure that decision makers prioritize investments that enable growth in our region. We have a lot of focus on business intelligence on a broader scale. We monitor world events and also make sure that we provide information about how this can impact companies in Norrbotten. We also do a lot of international trade and business support. Part of the reason why we are here today is because of this, and you will learn a little bit more from my colleague Sabrina later on today about this. If you're curious to know more about Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce, you can feel free to contact either me or my colleague Sabrina. You will find our contact information later on. Today we are here for trade talks, and just some quick facts about trade talks. Trade Talks by Swedish Chamber is a joint initiative by the regional chambers of commerce in Sweden. It consists of a webinar series hosted by experienced experts from our chamber networks worldwide. Through Trade Talks, you get access to the latest updates and analysis on current markets. The webinars are built in dialogue with experts from both Swedish and foreign chambers of commerce, other relevant market experts, as well as companies and organizations that can provide insights and experience and lessons learned from respective markets. For more information, please feel free to visit our website. You will find everything at norrbottenchamberofcommerce.se at Trade Talks by Swedish Chambers. Before we kick off, just a short little formalities. It's a 90-minute market introduction to the US market. The agenda for today is I will start off, and then you'll hear more from my colleague Sabrina about business opportunities in Norrbotten. Later on, we'll welcome André Persson from Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce in Texas. And after that, we'll hear challenges, opportunities, and strategies moving forward at the changing US market from Per Altenborg. He's a trade strategist and advisor to the Director General at National Board of Trade Sweden, Kommerskollegium. We'll round up with a couple of questions and takeaways, and that's about it. Okay, I think I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Sabrina. Welcome.
Thank you, Helen. My name is Sabrina Suiken. I am International Business Manager at the Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. And as Helen mentioned, I will just shortly introduce to what is happening in Norrbotten and also talk a little bit why we are here today, foreign trade promotion activities, so to say, from our side. Norrbotten is at the top of the Arctic Europe, and therefore also this webinar is really important for us what comes to the geopolitical perspective, but also the trade perspective that we are promoting at this webinar. the markets are far away from Norrbotten, but also infrastructure is crucial. And of course, our companies also do a lot of export and import in our area. So USA is one of the most important markets that we have for our companies also in Norrbotten, as it is for companies in Sweden. We often talk about Norrbotten and the Arctic Europe, that is the northern parts of both Finland, Sweden, and Norway, where we see a lot of synergies around the green transition that is happening right now from the industrial point of view. And of course, that also creates relationships and trade relations towards the Northern America, and nowadays also through NATO memberships that both Sweden and Finland have joined, and of course Norway already is part of. We have similar economies and business sectors that are primarily based on industry and natural resources, and that's also a lot of the base of the trade that today happens between our companies and the US market. As I mentioned, the infrastructure is crucial for our companies due to the fact that we have long distances, but of course also Northern America is a long distance market for our companies. However, from the business point of view, it's often easier for our companies to start in the Northern America and US market, and that's why it's always important also to be relevant and know what is happening, both from the political but also from the business side of things. Collaborative cross-border strategies are, of course, very important for us, not only from the Arctic Europe perspective, but also from the global perspective, what comes to also security question. And as mentioned, that we have already had some webinars also in the matter of, for example, what kind of business opportunities NATO creates for our companies in Northern America. So this is a good follow-up also for that webinar that we did the last spring. Just some key economic facts about Norrbotten before we go forward. We are the northernmost area in Sweden, but only 2.5% of the population in Sweden. So around 250,000 people live in Norrbotten, and that means also that we often are more interesting in a global perspective when we cooperate both with our neighbors in Finland and Norway, but also with other markets like US. We are raw material intensive and export intensive in Norrbotten, and 65% of Sweden's raw material exports come from our area, but also 90% of the iron ore is extracted within the European in Norrbotten area. So for us, both the European and global markets are really important, not the least for the steel market that has been also on point what comes to the discussions between the trade relations between EU and the States, and also Sweden and the States. 50% of the total tonnage of railway freight is transported between Luleå and Narvik, and that means also that the trade relations through the infrastructure are also really important for the east-western sector in northern part of Sweden, and also for the global trade, our cooperation with Norway and Finland, what comes to the exports, and also for imports of material that will be handled in the Norrbotten area, so to say. We have a lot of hydropower and green energy in northern part of Sweden, and that's also one of the reasons why we have a lot of industrial investments from international perspective also in Sweden. And Facebook or Meta was one of the first ones to realize that it was also interesting to do foreign direct investment from the US perspective in northern parts of Sweden. So everything that is happening after that is kind of that was the first snowballs start rolling, so to say. Port of Luleå, of course, has a important role for the trade in Norrbotten also, and it will become the second largest port after Gothenburg. But of course, also the connections between also in the northern and southern parts of Sweden are important. And what comes to transport and infrastructure, we also cooperate a lot internationally, and also do a lot of cooperation between our chambers in the whole of Sweden. Norrbotten is generally the area that is not that influenced by the economics and has the highest regional GDP per capita, for example. We have low employment and also low amount of bankruptcies up north. That means also that our business culture is quite strong and still going on, even though there's a lot of uncertainty in the world ongoing right now. Even during the pandemic, our companies were really good in finding new markets and finding new opportunities and pivoting, so to say, their business models to find new ways. And I believe that's the case even at the times that we are living right now. And the ongoing and upcoming investment volume in northern Sweden is 1,450 billion kroners, and 1,050 of those are going on in Norrbotten. That is the northernmost area that we talk about today. And a lot of them are still going on, even though there has been some challenges on other areas in northern parts. But just to give a picture what is coming and ongoing here up north in Norrbotten, from the investment perspective, we would like to show you a film to illustrate more what is happening, what are the challenges and opportunities that we can find solutions for through more cooperation also internationally. you. Just to give some perspective for the green sustainable transition that is happening up north in northern parts of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, as mentioned, and as the film already said, that we are part of the Building Better Tomorrow, and we need to work together and cooperate more also internationally to make it happen. That also means also working on our global relations with other markets. Just a couple of words about our foreign trade promotion work that we do in Norrbotten, that is part of the Sweden's strategy for foreign trade, investments and global competitiveness, and also part of the regional development strategy that we have in Norrbotten. This is the reason why we can also host this kind of webinars and make them also available for others than the ones that the companies that are chamber members in Norrbotten, so to say, and also lift up information about new markets and also relevant information about what is happening, for example, in the US market for the time being. We are not also the only organization that works with international trade in Norrbotten. We have a lot of organizations that help companies in different ways here and help them to prepare to make market entry strategies and also to grow on new markets. So just want to lift up the cooperation that we have in Norrbotten and also mention that there's a lot of different kind of organizations that can support our companies. And I know that this kind of cooperation also is ongoing in other parts of Sweden. So please connect to your chambers or other organization within this trade promotion, and you will also receive more information and help with growing on new markets. We have specific contact persons in Norrbotten, but of course you can always contact Helen or me, as she mentioned earlier, at our chamber, and we can help you to find the right connections and right organization. If it's about financing of exports or any other matters, we can help you to find the right ways to connect with our colleagues that can help you further with the growth work of your business. And just want to also mention that we still have possibility for companies that are located in Norrbotten or have interest and operations in Norrbotten also to seek money for consultation that we offer for companies outside Sweden on one market that they can choose and use that growth money too, so to say. That is also part of our EU project and also this foreign trade promotion program that we have. So please go into our calendar if that sounds interesting and see if it's possible for your company also receive this kind of support to grow, for example, on the US market. We already have a couple of companies that actually have been working on the US market. So it's still relevant, even though there are uncertain times that of course also influence the decisions going forward. So from my part, I would like to thank you for this introduction that we could do about Norrbotten and what is happening up here, and also remind that the key for success is the coordination, cooperation, and co-planning, and that's why also we do this kind of activities with our chambers outside Sweden, as Andre is today talking from the US perspective, but also with Kommerskollegium, Sweden's National Board of Trade, that also are experts in telling what kind of relations and how all this uncertainty influences the trade between our companies and areas, so to say. So I would like to ask my colleague Helen to come back here and introduce our speakers after a film that we want to show, just some pictures about Norrbotten, and after that Andre and Per will talk more about the US market.
Do you remember when we used to run away through the night? There is a story about us two, and it's written about me and you. Not even time can stop us now, 'cause we are forever young. Do you remember how we used to run against the morning sun? Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now. Not even time can stop us now, 'cause we are forever young. Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now. Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now.
Hi again. Hopefully you enjoyed that movie, showcasing a little bit of the place where we live and we like to call home Norrbotten. So we're here today to talk about the United States market. It ranks as Sweden's third most important trade partner and EU's largest export market. From industrial goods to services, the US remains one of Sweden's top export destinations, where American investments play a crucial role in Sweden's economic growth. There's around 1,500 Swedish companies currently present in the US market, and trade volumes exceeds over 500 billion Swedish crowns. This webinar focuses on Swedish-American trade relations and the global trends that shape them. Donald Trump's return to the political stage, coupled with a more protectionist trade policy, certainly shifts the dynamic. Increased tariffs, renegotiated trade agreements, and a strong focus on America First policies. These are developments that will most likely impact Swedish companies. What opportunities exist to navigate the world of increasing uncertainty, but also emerging possibilities? In this webinar, we will delve deep into these questions and provide an up-to-date overview of the trends shaping the future of US-Swedish trade relations. We're going to start by welcoming our first speaker, Mr. André Persson. He is the president and chairman of the board at Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce in Texas. But he's also a writer, a best-selling author, senior leader in communications, has a lot of experience in geopolitics, government and stakeholder relations, international relations, public affairs, and PR. So without further ado, I will hand over to Andrea.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me. Also, thank you very much for the info you gave initially here. It's always nice to take part of new facts that I wasn't really aware of when it came to Norrbotten. Happy to be here. Yes, do you just want me to start by commenting the recent weeks? It has been a bit turbulent here in the United States, as you also read in the newspapers.
That would be an excellent start, I think.
Yes, it's been somewhat of a roller coaster. I think that many people were very prepared for what to come, but still not prepared. May sound a bit contradictory, but I don't think that it comes as a surprise for many of the Trump voters and for many others who has actually been listening to Donald Trump during the presidential election campaign, because I think he's been very clear about what he wanted to do, and his message, America First, was really, really pointed out in his inaugurational speech a couple of weeks ago. And from that point, he just started with a lot of activities, both on the domestic arena, but also on the international political scene. So what has been on high on the agenda and high on the debated quite a lot, is this thing about the tariffs, of course, which is crucial and important aspect of trade, especially for a country like Sweden. We are extremely export dependent. We have a big trade with the United States, as you also mentioned initially. We're not really clear about where that's going to take us. I mean, he started with Canada and Mexico. He wanted to raise the tariffs to 25%, if I remember it correctly. And then he went after EU. It's hard to say right now where this is going to end. I also think that we need to learn that what is being said by the new president doesn't always necessarily mean what's going to happen. He used his rhetoric as a part of the negotiation agenda that he has. So I guess it remains to be seen a little bit where this will all take us. But we need to be prepared. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Andre. Maybe you want to talk some more about what you do at the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce in Texas and how you help companies.
Yes, the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce consists of 20 chambers in the United States total. So the umbrella organization's name is Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce, United States. Texas have 3 chapters, Austin, Dallas, and Houston. But we also have chapters on the West Coast, Seattle, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but also in the Midwest. I mentioned a few in Texas. We are in Chicago, we are in Idaho, Ohio, we are on the East Coast, of course, and we have one goal, and that is to facilitate trade between the United States and Sweden, both ways, I might add. We clearly see that it's a constant interest of coming to the United States. We try to with the help of our members, of course, we are creating these platforms for people to meet, whether they want to come to San Diego or Florida or New England for that matter. We have around 2,000 members all over the United States, mostly Swedes, but also people who in one way or another are involved within Swedish trade, working for a Swedish company or a Swedish organization based in the United States. Or it could also be Swedes that, just are curious about the United States in general. So that's what we do. And I think that our strength is that we are so spread out on 20 different places. That makes us the biggest Swedish trade organization in the United States. And with this geographical spread, we can also offer a vast network of people. And I will probably get back to this thing later today, talking about the importance of having a network in the United States. And I think that's our unique selling point, actually, because United States is a network society. Without connections or contacts, you hardly get anywhere, and it very much differs from Sweden in that way. And coming here 6 years ago myself, I was a bit surprised to see that at such a close range. So that is a very, very important aspect of making business here in the United States. So that's the SAC USA in short.
Excellent. I'd also like to say we preface this by doing a little LinkedIn questionnaire to you, where we talked about a couple of questions where you answered. And so what would be your advice to companies curious about or seeking to expand to the US market?
Well, I think that the first advice is just, be prepared, do your homework, because the US market is a highly competitive market and it has high costs for operations. But on the other hand, it offers also enormous opportunities if you enter this market in a strategic way. And there are, of course, other things to say as well, but I think that also you should focus on market fit and local adaptation. What works in Sweden doesn't necessarily have to work here in the United States without adjustments. And I also would like to emphasize that I mentioned the network, of course, but the third thing is do not underestimate the cultural barriers. The US is not Sweden, and I've seen that also many times that Swedes sometimes tend to think that Americans are like us, but it's very important to try to adapt and tune in. So, but be prepared is the number one message. If I should give an advice to companies curious about coming here.
Excellent. I lived in the States for 5 years, and I can say that networking is definitely one of the key factors there. They also tend to network a little bit differently. Swedish people are usually a little bit quieter and doesn't really, maybe they're not always the people that are the most outgoing, meanwhile, like Americans are, and I think you should just ride the wave because they're very friendly people. So do your networking homework would be also a takeaway. So you worked with a lot of companies that have expanded to the US market, and can you share 3 important takeaways for companies interested?
Well, yes. Here in Texas, we have almost 100 Swedish companies currently. And if I am to say something about those who are successful, they actually have been, how should I say, not my advice, but being listening to that. I mean, I try to. I sometimes feel like I sound like a parrot, but this thing that about being prepared. When they come and they are prepared, I can clearly see that. If I compare with maybe our neighboring countries, the Finns and the Norwegians, Danes, they are a bit more humble actually when they come to the United States. They don't really think that Finland is exactly like the United States. I think that many Swedes think that's the case, and I was one of them actually when I came. I didn't think it was such a big difference, and I also been working in the IT industry in Sweden. I've been working for American companies, but it is a big difference sitting in an office in Stockholm working for an American company but coming here. So I think that's a big thing. Don't underestimate the cultural barriers. Those who succeed here, they know that they are abroad. Still, of course, we have more in common with the Americans than maybe if you come to Kenya or Taiwan. Absolutely. This is an Anglo-Saxon society. They speak English and we do speak English as well, but don't let that fool you. So I would like to get back to that point again. I also would like to say we talked about, or I talked about this thing about building a network. I think it's important also if you come to a place in the United States and there are Swedes, and now I'm doing some advertising here for the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce, but it's not a bad idea to talk to a Swede who's been living in the United States for quite some time. Not only does he or she have the network, but they can also tell you about things from a Swedish perspective and make you understand through the filter of a Swede how it is to make business in the United States, what you need to think about. Because if you only talk to Americans, they will sell, sell, sell. They will talk, 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 and they will take it for granted that you are aware of everything here. They just, this is a country where they expect you to assimilate in like 2.5 seconds and understand the full range of what this society has to offer and the do's and don'ts. But if you talk to a Swede, they can actually tell you a little bit about the mistakes they've done, because all Swedes who come here do make mistakes, and that is actually a very good source. So they would love to talk about that. And if I ask a Swede here, asking them about the mistakes that they've done, it's pretty useful, I must say. So that taps into the first point that I said also initially, that you should be prepared. So talk to Swedes who have been living here in the United States of America for a long time. They know what to do and not to do. Then, of course, talk to American experts in your field, in your industrial field. But don't forget to talk to the Swedes. So I guess that was more than 3 takeaways, but I hope it makes sense to you.
Yes, it definitely does. And I think that answered my next question, which was, can you share a common mistake companies make? But I think you also summed it pretty quick, or summarized it pretty nicely or neatly.
Yes, There's one thing I would like to add to that. All Swedes that I met that comes here, and also other foreigners actually, everybody think it's much more expensive than they thought it would be. Even if they've done a budget that is really good, it never meet ends. It's always more expensive. So that's a very good important point actually. And I should also mention that you need to have a good lawyer, and that you should fix through your network and your connections here, because they're bad lawyers too. So I would like to emphasize the word good before the word lawyer.
I was just going to add that it's technically judicially heavy in the United States compared to some of its neighboring countries. So sometimes it's easier to
Yes,
take a step towards Canada and then maybe that way go to the US market.
yes. Transaction costs here can be very, very, very high. And this is a high transaction cost society because trust is not, trust is not as high as in Sweden. And we come from a high trust society. Let us not forget that. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Absolutely. I am very much a part of that culture. And but it doesn't apply here. It's so sad, but that's just the way it is.
Okay. Thank you. So just to summarize, be prepared. US market is very competitive, high cost of operations, but also, high cost, high reward. Focus on market fit and local adaptation. What works in Sweden might not work in the US market. Cultural barriers, we are similar, but we're also very different. Build a strong network. Use Swedish people that are already present there, but then also make sure that you have the legal advice, etc., that you need in order to be successful.
Yes.
Excellent. I think we're going to welcome you back a little bit later, but we're going
Yes.
to switch over and we're going to welcome our next speaker, Per Altenberg, who's a trade strategist and advisor to the Director General at the National Board of Trade, Kommerskollegium. The floor is yours, Per.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for the invitation, Helen and Sabrina. It's always a pleasure to interact with Norrbotten and Chamber of Commerce. I hope that you will soon come to Stockholm again and our Handelskammaren that we have here that meets regularly. I've been asked to basically, I guess, update you on the situation, on the trade policy situation with respect to the US. How does for instance, what is the impact of the current measures? And I saw that there was a question in the chat already about the new tariffs that are being discussed. And I want to emphasize that there's a few of these have already been decided. I mean, you have the steel and aluminum tariffs that are now being reintroduced, that were in place a few years ago, and that were then put on ice. And of course, that is something that could impact Norrbotten and your companies. But here, the key thing, of course, is to check. The devil is always in the details, as I emphasize in trade policy. So just because you say that there are tariffs on 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum, doesn't mean that it is for all different tariff lines, of course. So you need to check the tariff lines and exactly what type of goods you're exporting or importing, for that matter, to the US. So always check the details. That is one piece of advice. And for the rest, we discussed a lot in recent weeks here at Kommerskollegium how to interpret all the noise from the US. And the conclusion is, I think Andrea summarized it well. It's not a surprise, but at the same time, it comes as a shock when it's so fundamentally shifts how you view trade policy, going from a rule-based trade system based on WTO rules and norms and everything that the US has created from the beginning. They have negotiated, signed, and ratified the WTO treaty, as well as, of course, the agreement with Mexico and Canada. So we should be rash, but at the same time, as Andrea said, be prepared. That's important. I think that right now we're moving from a situation which was rules-based to a new transaction-based kind of trade policy. and that creates a lot of different problems. We see how large they will get eventually. I think that the US relation with Mexico and Canada on trade policy will serve as a litmus test for the rest of the world, including for the EU. Because after all, there you have a free trade agreement in place that Trump negotiated, that Congress, with the support from both aisles, ratified, and that was implemented during Trump's last term. So this means that if he decides to implement reciprocal tariffs toward Mexico and Canada, that also means that I think other countries will draw conclusions from that. It means that you cannot negotiate and sign broad agreements with the US from now on. You cannot agree on things that you can't take back later because the US cannot be trusted, if you will. On the other hand, if that agreement is respected, it might be a different thing. And then there is more leeway for broader types of agreement. There was a question that you sent to me, Helen, about how US companies should navigate. And of course, one recommendation that I have is to have redundancy, spread risks right now, because neither I nor anyone else can basically say what's going to happen. But there will be a higher level of risk. There will be less rule-based, as I mentioned, and there will be more discretion in trade policy decisions. And that means that you need to have options all the time to be able to switch from one line of action to another. And that also includes, of course, different geographical ways to solve your sourcing and so forth. And of course, again, be prepared, as was mentioned before, and stay informed. Use our website. We try to update on the formal policies all the time. We don't try to update so much about exactly what was said in the latest news flash or in the latest press conference, but what is actually being prepared in terms of legislation or executive orders. And because even the executive orders have to be implemented later on. So you need to, again, look at the details of what is actually going to come out of the policy process. And don't hesitate to contact us for information or even for recommendation. We're always available for all Swedish firms who are engaged in international trade. So please contact us. One last, perhaps, word of introduction is, after we went through all of this, tried to analyze all the noise, we eventually came to the conclusion that there is no master plan from the US at this point. It's very contradictory, the different policies. I could mention a few of the things that we noticed that are just, you can't do the one thing and then the other at the same time. It's just not possible. So I don't think we should try to rationalize too much of what is being said. Instead, follow very closely what actually comes out of the policy process in concrete terms and relate to that. I think that's the only advice I can give at this point. I went along with trying to rationalize Trump before and try to figure out whether that was something he said in order to make a deal, or whether the tariff plan was rather part of a long-term plan to stimulate the US economy. It's all very difficult to say, and I think we should, at least I should, refrain from trying to rationalize too much at this point. I think I stop there, and then we can engage more in the Q&A, if that's okay with you, no?
Absolutely. I think that sounds actually excellent. I like what you said about spread risk and the redundancy to have options. I know that when we have the pandemic in Norrbotten companies actually increased their exports because they were able to spread the risk and find new markets pretty quickly. So they were able to adjust. And I think that is safe to say that it's a good bet to make sure that you're not just putting all your eggs in one basket. I've heard your colleague, Generaldirektör Anders Ahnlid, say, make trade policy evidence-based again. So what are some of the implications of increased tariffs on a global trade overall? I know that the science says tariffs are bad, but others say they love it.
In terms of politics, it seems to work, but science is correct in the end. So it will increase risk and it will increase uncertainty and the cost of the kind of business that uses those goods that are being faced with tariffs. So, but I think I want to emphasize that when a country imposes new tariffs or raises tariffs, it's the country that imposes those tariffs that is hurt the most. So as long as Sweden or the EU doesn't retaliate much, as long as there is no ond cirkel here, then I think we should be fine. I mean, obviously there will be increased uncertainty in doing business with the US, but as Andreas said, there is still a lot of opportunity in the US market, and as long as you can navigate those opportunities and those risks, should be fine. But the big problems, I would say, come when the rest of the world starts to retaliate. And that is something that we haven't really simulated yet. So we're doing that right now to see how much worse it can get, if you will. What else is important with respect to staying evidence-based? Well, one thing that maybe is interesting to us is how it's discussed so much, this issue of the trade balance and tariffs in relationship to the trade balance. And when we look at evidence, and it's something that everyone says, tariffs don't affect the trade balance. There are other macroeconomic factors that determine the trade balance. So that is something that takes a lot of air right now. And that is basically a non-issue. If you want to reduce the US trade deficit, then the fiscal deficit should be reduced, or you should find a way to not make the US market so attractive, because then less capital will flow into the US, and that will also reduce the trade deficit. But of course, you don't want that. But that's one of these contradictory policy lines that we have noticed. Both invest more in the US, but also close the trade deficit, and they are sort of communicating lanes. So where were we now? I think I lost my train of thought.
No, I think you said keep our heads cool. No trade wars, please. And especially not for Sweden, who's a small export-dependent country. And that would not be good news.
That was an excellent interpretation of what I just said. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So another question that we were talking about earlier is US trade policy under Trump more of a negotiation tactic, or maybe a way to boost American business, or do they actually, like, what's the purpose of why you're, have this looming threat of increased tariffs?
Well,
also, Andre, you can feel free to chime in on this question.
Yeah, please do want to take that, because I mentioned before that from my point of view, there is no master plan. I'm not prepared to interpret Trump here because there's so much contradictory messages coming here. So maybe Andre can take this question.
Well, I think that this rhetoric around trade balance, if you go back a few months to the election campaign, that is kind of tied to American jobs, buy American and all that. So that rhetoric taps into, okay, we have a lot of Japanese products, or for that matter, European products, and but we make great things, and you should buy that to support our domestic industry, and the trade balance comes into that. So I think that's how you should, follow that path. I think also that if you look at trade balance, I mean, Per explained it very good. But trade balance has it's more of a psychological aspect of it. We are importing more goods than we are exporting, i.e., we are getting poorer, but it's more of an image thing, I would say. So I sometimes think about the American car industry. They have a very, very big domestic market, right? So 300 million people, and that's why the American cars are made in a certain way, right? So gas is cheap, roads are straight. So the cars are manufactured and designed in a special way. Well, while Japanese cars, Korean cars, and European cars, we want to get into the US market. We try to tune in because our domestic markets aren't that big. So we try, especially Volvo, who has been really good. But Volvo only has 1% of the market share of cars in the United States. But what the Japanese and the Europeans have been so good at is like listening to the consumers in the United States, what they want to have in their cars. If they want to have two cup holders, well, we fix that. Whilst American cars, they don't need to adapt so much to the international market because their domestic market is so big. So if you want big engines here in the United States, gas is cheap, we're going to give that to them. But the Europeans will probably not buy them because gasoline is too expensive in Europe. So you have to adapt to change your trade balance. So that is actually a part of it. Yeah, I think it's a psychological aspect of the trade balance, and it has to do with what Donald Trump said in the election campaign. And that is, he is still there in a way. And I can clearly see also that he's still in the election campaign, actually, in many ways. You know,
Yeah, that's my question too.
yeah, he's rubbing it in. I won, and while we others say, "Come on, let's move on." I think things will settle in a while, and many people have said this before me. Rhetoric is one thing, and the actual outcome of it's the most important thing. So we will slowly learn again how these things are intertwined with each other. So.
There are two questions in the chat that we could address. One is, do you see any concrete indications of tariffs that will hit the EU yet? No, there are no concrete, apart from the ones that I mentioned, aluminum and steel, that will take effect on the 12th of March. There are no concrete information yet about what tariffs might hit the EU. And the other one is about whether companies should include clauses in commercial contracts with respect to tariffs. Very good question. And what I can say first is that it's important to keep in mind that the importer pays the tariffs. The company importing from abroad, based in the US, will carry that cost, and it might want to carry the cost over to the exporter. But as long as you're not the importing party here, you don't have to worry about the tariff, actually. Do you want to add, Andrea?
No, I think it's well put. Well put. You're the expert here, but I agree. I agree. Yes.
But I'm not sure whether there are insurances that would cover the risk of tariffs, because ultimately, of course, it's a tax, so it would have to be paid. And if it refers to the good that you want to import, so there I'm not an expert on that. I doubt that you could. Obviously, you cannot sign it away in a contract, but maybe there are insurances that would cover that. But the problem is that as soon as the tariff is actually announced, then it's known. So then it's no point in having an insurance to cover that. But then I guess the importer and the exporter would have to cover the cost together. And like I said, it's paid by the importer, but the importer might want to carry it over to the exporter.
Yeah.
I think
And
that
this
was
is
one of the sorry. I think that was
yeah,
one
no,
of the
no. I
things
mean,
that President Trump said that he wanted to make sure that the exporter pays the tariff, which I don't know that it's necessarily doable. So we'll see, I guess.
well, I guess we can clearly see that it will be the consumer that will pay it by the end of the day. And this is also the criticism to this tariff. It's going to, drive inflation. Also, it can be inflation driven. So consumers will probably pay it by the end of the day if this comes into reality.
Thank you, Pat. Do you want to add something?
On this question that started with
I think in
my
general,
boss saying that,
also, I'll open up the floor for you to add. Speak more broadly if there's something else you want to add.
think it's, I mean, what we see right now, if we span out a little bit, I think that what we've seen in recent years is that there's a lot of growth and trade in Asia, less so in Europe. So, and America is sort of in between. Now, my fear is that, I mean, one message here might be that we're talking a lot about tariffs now because it's easy to comprehend, and it's sort of, will it be 10% or 20%, or what will it be? Will it be the US, Mexico, Canada, and so forth? But there is also a lot of regulation coming through in the US that will impact the way you do business. Not least, I think there is regulation about software in electric vehicles that will come in 2026 and 2027. And software, basically anything from China. I saw that there was a new executive order, I think it was, that also regulates how you transport your goods to the US, and that it should be preferred on US vessels. Remember, there is this law called the Jones Act, which says that you can only transport goods on waters inside the US, between US harbors on US vessels. But this would extend that legislation to cover even international transport then. But there's also exceptions in that piece of legislation / executive order. So we'll see how that eventually comes out. So there are a lot of things that take place right now that are potentially even more important, especially then for specific firms that trade with the US than the tariffs that we discuss.
Oh. And I think that the overall issue, I guess, is like, you know, small countries are generally export dependent. Sweden is one of them. We do gain from free trade and limited regulations, no tariffs, etc. So I think that the paradigm shift is maybe perhaps the biggest issue here, that US has gone from being one of the, if not the biggest free trade champion to now changing and having like a paradigm shift. And that leaves, you know, a lot of vacuum as to what's the next phase going to be. What are we looking at if we look, you know, not just this president term, but if we look longer, is there going to be, you know, is there going to be more trade wars? Is there going to be more regulations globally? Do we really think that countries, like I feel like almost all goods, if we take cars, for instance, is a good example. I'd say there's hardly any cars that's, you know, produced where like everything from resource to finished product is from one country. And I think that that's going to be the interesting part to see what happens with that going forward, because there is a big paradigm shift.
Yes, there is. There is a paradigm shift, and exactly how it's going to play out will be difficult to see. But maybe this trend that trade would increasingly pivot towards Asia, another Asia pivot here, also in trade and trade policy. Whereas the risk is, of course, that the more that the US imposes new regulation or new tariffs, that the US market will be more closed or more of a risk, and that might also then push trade elsewhere in the world. And then we'll see how the EU decides to meet that challenge. That could also determine whether we will also end up in a backwater or whether we will go more in the Asia direction.
Thank you. I think I'm going to actually welcome my colleague up, and then we're going to do some final thoughts. Do we have any more questions from the audience? There were a lot of people here today listening in.
Yes, I think Per got questions that was directly actually to him, and there was continuous discussion around the legal part of tariffs and so on, what to do and how to prepare. And there was one comment on also that Incoterms is also a good way of regulating these kind of risks from the exporters and importers side, and when it comes to contractual parts, so to say. So I think as a lawyer myself, I fall back to the part that Andre actually mentioned, that it's really important to have a good lawyer, and you need to know that your lawyer has the knowledge on that state and that country where you're active, so to say, especially in the states where you have different kind of regulations also between the states. So I think that's a really good thing to think about, and also even more now in uncertain times to be proactive and think ahead, so to say, as it's not easy to decide and contractually find all the things, but of course you can be prepared and you can have advice of the experts that actually know how to do business in for example US and the different states that have different regulations.
And also, there's now additional information in the chat here that refers to the question that was asked before. That is very relevant.
Yeah. And it could be also mentioned perhaps about the Incoterms, that's the International Chamber of Commerce that standardize these regulations. And if you need any more information or education around these questions, you can always contact your chamber, whether it is here in Norrbotten or in the States that Andre represents, for example, or in any other parts of Sweden or other markets. So please use the standardized help that we have and the advice that is available through the Chamber of Commerces that are and our global network, so to say, that are in different local markets that also can help you further with those things. So networking and getting the expert advice and preparing, as it was mentioned, is really important for companies to be successful for any market, but perhaps especially for the States right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do just a short little summary of what we talked about. The US is high cost, high rewards, so be prepared if you're planning to enter the US market. Network, use help or get help, and also get expert advice. I think is something that we've heard. Also, make sure that you're up to date on all the regulations and rules for that country. You can find both the Chambers of Commerce can help you with that, but also Kommerskollegium do a lot of analysis, and they do a lot of different ways to spread information about what's going on. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, spread them. Make sure you have redundancy. Tariffs are a tax on import, so it will affect the final customer in the US. But also watch out for the regulations and not just the tariffs. Make sure that you're also aware if it's it's not going to be universal tariffs. It might be a specific sector or maybe even a specific good that's going to be impacted. And then just keep an eye out. We do have global value chains, but we do think that we're going to see there is a paradigm shift in what we've had for a really long time, which is the free trade. That's been the norm, sort of, and now we're seeing something else. But keep your heads cool, because it's going to usually turn out better than we expect. Did I miss anything? Does anybody want to add anything?
It's a very good summary.
Andrea, do you want to add something?
Yeah. Well, I would like to add that I mean there are we were talking about opportunities, right? So I mean this is a a turbulent time, and it can appear as a bit scary, and we don't know what's next. But I would like to emphasize that Sweden has been in the United States for a long time. We've been doing business with the United States for a long time, and throughout bad and good times, Sweden has sustained, and we are a very highly innovative country. I mean, mind you, Sweden is the 10th biggest investor in the United States, creating almost 300,000 jobs, which, I mean, it's pretty amazing considering that Sweden have 10 million people. So regardless if the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, will disappear now, maybe it will during Trump, it was implemented during Biden. Even if it will disappear, Sweden will stand strong. And I had a chronicle in Affärsvärlden a couple of weeks ago where I suggested that maybe our green offer, maybe we need to tweak that a little bit, because as sad as it may sound, maybe it's not what we are going to emphasize. Maybe we're going to be an innovative small country instead that have a big business activity with the United States. And I think that, history learned us that things will work out eventually, even though it may seem a bit chaotic right now. But I mean, we have the defense and cybersecurity with Sweden entering NATO 1 year ago. Energy efficiency will still be in high demand in the United States, even though maybe that's not just what we're going to talk about as a green thing. Maybe green things are in energy efficiency where they save money. So we know how to do these, and also we can, targeting state level partnerships, focus on dynamic states like Texas, 32 million people, the eighth biggest economy in the world. We only have 100 Swedish companies here, of 2,000 in total in the United States. It's perfectly clear to me that most companies goes to the coasts. But Texas is, as I said, the second biggest state in the United States, and has a lot to offer. So Sweden could do a lot of things. There are opportunities coming, and I also would like to say that Germany just had an election. Germany is our biggest trade partner. The economy there doesn't look too good. We don't know what the new government will take us, if they can form a government to start with, if they can, solve their energy crisis problem, their how should I say, challenges on the private sector markets are enormous. This leads to that Swedish companies maybe can get more trade with regions like United States and Asia. So the economy here is doing well. So if Germany and the European Union is slacking behind, you can look at the United States. Things are actually happening here, to sound a bit American.
And Sabrina, do you have some takeaways or thoughts?
I think one takeaway is from the Sweden's National Board of Trade that not always the political changes and turbulence influence directly the trade, or we can't see the influence right away. So we shouldn't be too scared of everything that is happening. Of course, uncertainty creates situations where you need to plan, and you need to weigh the risks and so on when you do business. But of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that we stop doing trade between Sweden or US or EU and the US. Perhaps it changes the form and direction sometimes, but it's not necessarily just a bad thing. And somehow one part of the hope that I have still about Trump is that he's a businessman in the core. So hopefully he's not only bad for the trade, even though he has the America First part that he is advocating right now. So hopefully somehow the trade will still be there and be strong, even though it changes the directions.
And let's also remember that we have a lot of large global Swedish companies that are present in the US market already. And so I think that's, we can also, as we said earlier, learn from others' mistakes. Also, don't be scared to reach out to companies that have maybe tried and failed, but also tried and succeeded, and what their takeaways were.
And it might also make changes like the pandemic, that perhaps, for example, for the investors in the US, it might be more interesting to be on site in Europe and see what is happening here instead of us just going to the States. So that might also find new forms of investment and business also going forward. So not all the crises are bad ones, or not all the influences of crisis are bad ones. So hopefully we can learn something about this also.
Keeps us on our toes, if nothing else. Excellent. Okay. I think that we're going to let Per go, because I know that you had another engagement. So I want to say thank you so much to both Per and André, to our speakers. Thank you so much for taking the time for providing us with your insights and your key takeaways. It's been very useful. I sure learned something new, and I hope that all of you listening in also learned something new.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very
The rest
much.
of us can still stay, but we'll let Per go at least. So if you want more information about Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce and some of our events, please go to our website. It's norrbottenhandelskammaren.se.calendar or kalender, which is in Swedish, but you'll find it if you go to our website. I would like to take the time to highlight two of our major events. We have upcoming on May 7th, Maritime Forum, for those interested in the big picture of maritime questions relevant to our region. I think we're going to be around 175 participants, and so it's specifically more focused on maritime questions. But then on the fall side, we have Logistics Forum North, which is on November 12th. And we're probably going to be around 300, I think. We were 275 or 285 last year, where it's a part international conference. We do have a lot of English speaking. Majority of the conference is in Swedish, but you will also, some of the speakers have their presentation material, and a lot of people in the audience speak Swedish. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think just that there are an international perspective to also these events that we have that have started with the Norrbotten perspective, but also have visitors from, of course, from Finland and Norway that are the closest markets, but also from markets like Germany and other European markets. Of course, that's the closest ones, but we have had visitors also from Canada and from the US in some of our events also earlier. So it's becoming also more and more global arena also for those that are interested what is happening and what kind of business opportunities are created in the northern part, also from the geopolitical perspective, and now also from the NATO perspective that also is going to create both business opportunities but also changes in infrastructure and so on.
And I think specifically if we look at Logistics Forum North, I think that's we were seeing an internationalization of our local market or our regional market. And I think that's part in why this has become such a big event. Yeah, I think that if you want, as we said earlier, please feel free to reach out to either me or Sabrina, or if you want to reach out to our speakers today, Andrea or Per, you had their contact information, but I've also tagged them on LinkedIn, so maybe it's not harder than to just, send them a message on LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you to all of you for tuning in. Thank you to our speakers again. To our production team, thank you for helping us. To my colleague Sabrina, thank you. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Yeah, we hope to see you next time. Trade Talks Poland is on April 8th, and you will see us again in November for Trade Talks
Japan.
Yep. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to let you, I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I think we're not going to keep you any longer than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.